Hi, welcome.
There's
Sorry,
Elias.
I had to come in straight up Latino fashion.
Are you
Late.
kidding
Late.
me? Guess what? I showed up an hour early. It was like so unlike me.
Wow,
thought
you're
it-
not Latina.
I thought, oh, I'm so Cuban. I showed up an hour early and Ken was texting me about his dog. And I'm like, why is he texting me a minute before the interview? I'm trying to prepare. And then he's like, you're an hour early. I'm like,
Wow. You're American now.
We don't like the stereotypical judgment of Latinos are late. But
right? I mean, it's not like we're late and we drink coffee like incessantly, right?
Latinos get
Zuzy was supposed to be at my house at 1 p.m. on Friday, and she showed up at 9 a.m. on Monday.
That is awesome.
Go. You're the
My name is David Cancel. I'm the CEO and founder of Drift. And Drift, we help companies accelerate their revenue by making business buying simpler.
Mi nombre es Elias Torres. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Drift. Thank you so much for having me here. I want to encourage all Latinos, right, and immigrants that the American dream is alive. And we all need to, chase our own version of success. This is a great country, and please, keep pushing and breaking the ceilings out there.
We wanted to talk to you about your stories, and then the story to becoming entrepreneurs, and then what all that means as a Latinx entrepreneur going forward.
So I love immigrant stories, and my family's Cuban, and I was raised by my 4 abuelos, my 2 abuelas and my abuelos. So I'm curious about who influenced you from like your Latin backgrounds. Who gave you your drive, or who influenced you to the point where you are today? And you're like, no, this person really gave me like this, which is critical to me being like this entrepreneur that I am today. I'd love to know if you had those people in your lives.
I know David's answer. Go, David. Go. Start.
No, you know my answer. You start.
I would say both of our answers are our mothers. My mother, hard worker, single mother. It's an interesting blend that I can see myself exactly coming out of her, right? It's like she's both an academic. She was a professor. She was a veterinarian at the University in Nicaragua, in Managua. And she was also trying really hard to start a business, right? She would serve as a veterinarian for this large poultry farms, big, commercial farms. And she wanted to raise her own like production level chickens, right? So she was trying to start this business many times and she failed because it's not a country, that has the, propensity to support entrepreneurs. It was very difficult for her as a single mother to be able to have the cash in hand to create a business. And I remember her trying and she lost money. And so those two things of her, right? She's smart, she's academic, but she's also street smart, and she was trying to do that. And so I have both of those components, but I wasn't able to realize those things until I came to this country, right? Where the American dream is alive, and working with David and being inspired. So to me, it's my mother and David. David was like, kind of like trailblazed the entrepreneurial journey. 10 years prior to me, I was in the corporate world at IBM. But finally, 10 years after, when I left IBM and I met up with him, is where he took me in this crazy roller coaster called startups that I don't know if everybody, I know a lot of people want it, and then we can give it to you. It's painful, it's really difficult, right? But it is exciting for me to be in the arena, to be fighting and daring greatly by trying to accomplish and build a great company.
David, your mom too. I want to add on to this question for you. So for me, I want to know, like, what do you guys think about this notion of the immigrant drive? I was born here, but my parents are immigrants, highly influenced by them. Is there like this genetic disposition when you're exposed to the hustle of being an immigrant and making it in this country? Does that give you an extra push into the entrepreneurial world? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely my mother, but I wouldn't say, I don't know if it's genetic or if it's learned, but I would say, your context is everything, right? That's who you model, right? That becomes your reality. It sets your limits in some ways you have to break out of it. And that's why it's important to always be finding new people to kind of up level yourself. Not even if you learn from them, but even if you're around them, all of a sudden you expose yourself and now you think you can do something that you thought was impossible before. Growing up, when my dad was around before my mom, it was just my mom, like they both worked, they were immigrants, they both worked 7 days a week. I mean, it's the typical immigrant story. So that set my context, right? That is what is normal to me, because that's all I saw and that's all I modeled. And so then I thought, like, no matter how hard I worked in a startup, it was never as hard as a single day of them working, especially when you think about the risk versus reward. And the worst case for me, I had nothing to lose starting companies early on, because like no one ever expected anything of me. And so I didn't have any social pressure. And the worst case, like I was a software engineer, I could get a job as a software engineer, make more money than both my parents ever made combined. So like, what was the downside of starting a company? It was very logical for me to start one.
I love what you just said about up level. I haven't heard that phrase before. Is that finding someone that can just show you a different vision, like more possibilities, where you're like, wow, look at what this person's accomplished, or look what I can accomplish if I just went in this direction. Like, can you explain up level a little bit? I love
Sure. I love that. A quote that I always, or paraphrase, is, like, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around, right? Because like you average them, you average down or you average up. So like, it's up to you, like, who are those people you surround yourself with? And that includes family, friends, colleagues, etc. That's because we model. And, for me, I grew up in a totally different time. Elias made an age joke there. So like, I grew up before Elias. And so I grew up in a time where there was no Google, there was no internet, there was no access to information, there was no Instagram. So because of that, I didn't know most things were possible, right? I only knew my small little neighborhood I grew up in. I didn't know anything else, right? I wasn't exposed to anything else. And so like, because of that, there were limitations that I set on myself. I didn't think I could do certain things because I had never seen anyone in my life do them. So like, why would I think I could do them? And so what happened to me is, I always say, like, I'm the Forrest Gump of this world, of this, what we do, because I accidentally stumbled myself into groups that were doing something way ahead of me and somehow worked with them or befriended them. And then what would happen every time is I would average up to their average. And then I would stumble on another group and then I would average up again. And I think Elias has lived this as well. Like, you just keep stumbling up. But if like you don't expose yourself to new people who are doing something that is the head of what you're trying to do, then you will never up-level yourself, right? Because it's just too hard through brute force and your own will to do it by yourself. You have to model somewhere. And that's the good thing about being humans. Like, we are simulation machines and we can model things. We can do that through experiences, or we could do that through reading and watching someone and learning, and then we can model our way there.
And that also takes a lot of courage, because you're going into uncharted territory and sometimes it's scary. So you have to get over that, probably the fear in your head, right? And
yeah, I think it takes I think Elias was kind of leaning this way. It just takes a high tolerance of pain, right? I always think like, or it is like, people want to start companies. I always think like, I've started 5 now, and I think like, I always say like, the first company is excusable because you're naive, right? Like, you don't know what it really means. The second one is like questionable, and if you start 3 or more companies, then you're certifiable. So I'm in the certifiable camp, because it is mostly this exercise of dealing with your own psychology more than anything else. Like, it's not about product in this, it's about the psychological battle that you go through every day. Elias can tell you more. Can you
explain? That. Yeah, can you explain that? The psychological battle of keeping yourself moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll take a little bit of that, right? And it's really about how you want to carry on in life, really. Do you want to, just like David was saying, you want to stay with the same friends or the same circle of people that you do the same routine over and over and it's safe? Unfortunately, life changes, right? You can't control that, and you cannot control your environment. So whether we sit still or whether we're seeking change, there's always going to be challenges that are going to come, right? And so we all are in this journey, and whether you're running a business or your just life, your family, health, you're going to have to learn how to face these fears. I think our mind is such a powerful thing, right? It can make us, do great things, like, what Tom Brady did with the Buccaneers. We're big fans. And I was reading an article about how he was encouraging and coaching the team and texting them for the 10 days prior to the Super Bowl, we will win, right? And so that positive mindset of saying, you know, you have talent, you made it to the championship, what's going to stop you, right? It's just your mind. And so that passion, that energy, that confidence is what allowed them to go into the field and annihilate the opponent, right? And so I think it's the same with startups, right? You have to learn how to be self-aware. You have to learn how to talk yourself off this negative thoughts and think about every day what you're going to accomplish, what the momentum you need to be driving. It is amazing. Every day we start fresh, and you can meet somebody that could encourage you. You can meet someone that give you the right advice. You can meet a new customer. And so it's the mentality of an entrepreneur, which is the mentality of an immigrant. When you first come here and you're like, how am I going to pay for the rent next month? Right? It's like, I'm making $5 an hour. Like, how do I go on to the next job? How am I going to buy this car? How am I going to pay for this?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. You know?
I would add that, you know, like, it's about, when we talk about like those like changing peer groups, like that is a really hard thing for a lot of us. Like, you know, like early in your life when you start, and later in your life when you start to change and you start to want to grow and develop, like you're going to get resistance from the people around you, and the closest people around will be your friends and family. And so like, you know, when you want to do something different than the people you grew up with, they're going to be like, what's going on, Zuzy? What happened? Why did you change? You're not the person you used to be. You don't hang around the neighborhood anymore. Why are you around those people? Like, you know, you're going to hear all this thing, and that phenomenon is called crabs in the pot, right? Like the crabs in the pot phenomenon is like, if you ever boil crabs in a pot, as soon as one crab tries to get out of the pot, the other crabs reach up and grab it back down, right? And that comes from, you know, your own self-doubt, your own insecurities of like, what are they doing that? Why are they doing that? Why am I not moving forward? And so like, we all go through that. And so we continue to go through that, Elias and I, every single day. Like, we want to do something different. And for us, we're all Latinos. And so like that, going in a new peer group will probably expose us to groups that are non-Latino. And the Latinos around us are going to be like, what's wrong with you? Why are you different? Why are you trying to break out? Like, what? Well, you don't like us anymore? You think you're better than me? Like, I heard all those things.
So how do you push past that? For me, super like good Cuban girl, people pleaser, I've been trying to break out of that forever, and I have, but it's hard when people are like, you feel the judgment, you know. Mm-hmm. How do you push past that? I mean, do you feel judgment? Does it bother you?
Yes and no. I think Elias will probably give you a more empathetic view because he's the empathetic one of the two of us. Like, I naturally never cared about what anyone thought of me, and I still don't. Like,
that is really
not for 1 second a day. Like,
I think that's such a powerful trait. Like, you know, because
but remember, Zuzy,
it's the gift and the curse.
He's certifiable. He's certifiable. So
Zuzy, it's the gift and the curse. Everything is the gift and the curse. It is a gift in some ways in what we do. It's a curse in other ways because I'm not empathetic in the way that I need to be, right? And so like, it's, you know, I still have that thing. I would never think for 1 second what someone thought of me. I don't know if that was my upbringing or that my situation that I went through or trauma in life. I don't know what it is, but like, I don't think about that. Elias does, so he can tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I like what David says, right? It's a blessing and it's a curse, right? It's what's your strength is your weakness, right? And so I'm the empathetic out of this marriage, right? And it's like, it's like David says, sometimes that's your curse. You did that, and I pay for it. And sometimes that's your strength, and that's what you need to lean on. So I would say, you know, you have to be you. I definitely can't understand exactly, right, what it is to be a Cuban woman, right, in the United States and what you've gone through. But we do go through similar things, right? It's like, as Latino, it's a different set of stuff. We all have to conquer them, right? I think that's the most important thing. But lean on your strength, lean on your empathy, right? Lean on caring for other people, wanting to understand, it's important, but you still have to have a clear goal of what you're trying to accomplish.
I would love to hear how you guys met, but also when you did come together to decide to start this business, was there a comfort and a bond there and like a certain chemistry that worked together because of your common backgrounds?
Absolutely. I will say, you know, I'm the more empathetic, so I'll say how I felt. David obviously felt nothing.
I don't have feelings.
He did not care. He did not care what you were doing.
He was like,
this is true. If you only knew how true that was, Zuzy.
Maybe that's why this works. When you don't care,
yeah,
then you have no expectation and you're pleasantly surprised.
Oh no,
Yeah,
he.
that's also called dating dynamics. When you don't care, like that's when you attract. Yeah.
David is no.
I know all about it.
No feelings, all expectations. But I would say that the short story on how we met, I would say David is born here, right? So he's not as Latino as I am, and I am empathetic, extrovert, touchy-feely, right? In fact, there's a story that in some podcast, when I first started working with him in a 10-person company, he used to go to this beach that I loved, and I would be like, I'm gonna work with this guy. He's gonna be my business partner. We're gonna go to the beach together. And then, but before I invited him over to meet at the beach, he tells me the story. It's like, oh, this guy wanted to meet with me from work, and I don't like meeting with anybody from work. That was like the beginning of our partnership, and I was like, I will never ask him to go to the beach. That's like 12 years ago.
That sounds so lovely. Like, have you ever been to the beach together?
No.
Now it would be weird if we like go to.
I kind of want to go to the beach with you guys after this whole thing's over.
Elias will go with you for sure. Elias
Okay.
Here's the thing, though. I was trying to break out of the IBM world, the corporate world, into the startup world, and I was meeting and networking in Boston, and everybody else was white. And I'll tell you, I did not feel comfortable, right? It's like all these people that I met, it was part of my ignorance. It's like, I don't know what is a good startup. I don't know what's a good idea, what's good funding, what's a good profile, who are the right people. I did not know how to do that. And then as I met David, right, it was like, we met at a luncheonette. We met for lunch in Andover. We met that day. That day I made the decision on the spot, right? I am a fast decision maker, but after 10 years IBM, I chose to leave and join his company and trusted him out of everybody else that I had met. It's like, I felt like I could trust him, right? And it's subconscious, but his blood, his family, his color is how we look. And look at us, we're like 12 years. We trust each other. We were partners in crime. I see so many founders just fall apart and not be able to work together. And mm-hmm. I never once with him felt discriminated or judged or anything. Never felt that, right? It's like we're always in this together, and we have to rise above break our ceiling together, right? So
I didn't discriminate against him, even though he was the first Latino I ever worked with after 10 years of working.
Bueno, that exists, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, that's probably why, I had this thing of like not thinking about what people think of me, because I grew up, I was born in the South Bronx, all Puerto Rican, but then moved to Queens, and I lived in a neighborhood that was 100%, white. And so I was the only person that looked like me. So my whole upbringing, I never saw anyone that looked like me. I started working in New York. I never worked with anyone that looked like me. And it was like 10 years later into my career that I finally worked with a Latino. I had never seen one. The only people I saw that were Latino that in the companies that I started cleaned the offices. And then they would ask me, they thought I didn't work there. They would ask me every day, you work here? In Spanish, they'd say, trabaja aquí? And I'd be like, yeah. And they'd be like, and they would look at me like, and they would think that I didn't work there because I was the only person that looked like
So
me.
would that bother you, or would you be like, oh yeah, you don't care? You didn't care.
I developed this shield. I had never been around, I had never seen any. So like, it wasn't like I was coming from a place where I was used to it and then I was fish out of water. I never had it. I never saw it. Mm-hmm. So.
Would love your take on like one or two tips for frankly, for Zuzy and I, who are partners in this startup, and also just for entrepreneurs out there working with a partner, just one or two tips that make it work, like the partnership work.
You know what's funny? Can you mention this? I am myself with you. I don't know what it is about you. I can be myself and I can tell you what I'm really thinking. I mean,
good.
Is that
rip, Zuzy? Let's go.
I do. I tell him, and then sometimes I feel bad because I'm empathetic too. So I'm like, I was a little too honest about his wardrobe. Or I'm like, Ken, your Spanish sucks so bad. Don't do it. Don't say it on camera. But no, but I do tell you what I think. But you guys, we talked about chemistry a little bit. Like, is this unknown, or unquantifiable chemistry a real thing? You were just saying so many startup founders fail, and they might have all the qualifications, but somehow they just don't work together.
One thing that I always say is that, and we kind of touched upon it a bunch of times here, is like your superpowers are your super weakness. So like whatever you're superpowered at naturally is going to be your super weakness. And like, it's important to know, because unless you know it's almost like every comic book and every, you know, superhero movie. Like, unless you know your power, like, then it will, you know, it will take over and you won't be able to control it. You'll be out of control. So you need to learn how to control it. And Elias has this empathetic, you know, extroverted energy and can talk to anybody. And over the years, he's learned to when to dial it up and when to dial it back down. That's really hard. I have this other energy and I have to learn how to market, talk to people, do this kind of thing that I'm doing now. So I have to learn how to turn that up, even though I might not naturally be there. So you two as partners have superpowers, super weaknesses. I think you should recognize what they are in each other. And I think you should help each other, you know, understand them so that they don't take over.
I think that's awesome advice. And I can relate, you know, because I am more extroverted and goofy, and sometimes in our world in media, like goofy doesn't play, right? And so I have to like dial that back because it's not about me. I'd love to talk this whole interview basically, you know, but I got to let you guys talk, you know, so I have to like control myself. That's why
I don't like talking. Although I talked mostly the most in this interview, probably.
Thank you. And right before the interview, I texted Ken and I'm like, please drive the interview. I didn't let him.
And I actually haven't. You did, so that's great.
I know, because I love talking. I love talking to you guys, and I was just so curious. I think these stories are so powerful because it allows moments of vulnerability where you guys really can tell us like what you're thinking, how you did it, how you're doing it, and it's very inspiring to other people. So thank you.